Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Future Connect webinar by Reality NXT. I'm Radhanjali Rawal. I'm your host for the day. I would like to welcome all our speakers and our moderator, Mr. Vishal Mir Chandani, CEO, Commercial and Retail Puravankara Limited, Mr. Arnav S. Kusen, Head of Real Estate and Product WeWork India, Ms. Riza, President, Residential Business Embassy Group, Mr. Amit Ramani, Founder and CEO, Office Space Solutions Private Limited, Mr. Sheshab Dharia, Regional CEO, Lodha Group, Mr. Ismail Khan, CBO, Nestaway Technologies Private Limited. Our moderator is Kritika Singh Rawat, Founder and CEO, Realty NXT. Before we begin, I would like to inform you all that the session will be recorded. Today, the topic of discussion is impact of coronavirus outbreak on planning commercial and residential projects in the future. Now, I would request Kritika to please take the discussion forward.
Thank you, Mridhanjali. So thank you everyone for joining us for this very important topic where we are discussing how our readers have also asked how the product planning will change in commercial, residential, even co-working and co-living space. So starting from commercial, Mr. Vishal, I wanted to ask, CEO of Barclays have already quoted that gone were the days where 7,000 people were put in the building. Facebook and Twitter has already announced all the employees have to work from home till December. And in India, we are seeing a lot of brands contemplating on the same and already has started executing on the work from home as being the new norm. So we are seeing why this is happening is we are seeing it's being very convenient for the employees also. And so would we see the office space consumption like this in terms of buying patterns to be decreasing in the future trend?
I think this work from home and these headlines that are getting created, I think they are getting created for every industry. So are we going to say that we're going to stop driving cars, for example, or stop traveling? We won't do that, right? This is a temporary phase. I think work from home has got exploded more than it actually should be, or the fear of work from home for office real estate. One needs to realize and understand that we are a very differently structured society in many ways. Right, so how we live our lives on a day-to-day basis, the kind of houses that we live in, they don't provide the luxury of having exclusive work study spaces, etc. So and the kind of inclusive lifestyles, family lifestyles that we have are quite restrictive. And if we have to do that for a month or 2 months as an exception, I think that is much easier than to do that on a continuous basis. It's a very, very difficult task to do so. And ultimately, see, we are social animals. We need to meet people. We are more engaging. You see, all our public places are always crowded and we're always talking to each other. You don't see this in advanced markets, which are very, very, not heavily packed or densely packed. So I think it's an overstated concern in my view. That said, certainly there will be a greater extent of work from home that has been prevalent until the start of COVID-19. We already had work from home prevalent to the extent of about 5 to 7-8%. I think that will grow to about 20 to 25%, right, of the workforce transitioning to working from home rather than being in the office. Now that said, you see that impact is about 30-40% of new staff working from home. But as a balancing factor to that phenomenon is also the de-densification of spaces. What is going to happen in offices also is that there will be requirement of more square footage, more area per seat that gets occupied. So today or before until COVID-19 had broken out, occupiers would plan seats based on 70 square feet per seat occupancy, right? But today, because of this distancing sort of a trend, they will be forced to again create more luxurious seating spaces. For example, it could even go up to 125 square feet per seat, which means you're looking at a jump of anywhere from 40, 50 to 70, 80% of area per seat. So it more than adequately offsets the risk that will shape up due to the work from home element. I think that is one important understanding we must have. I said that in various conferences, webinars, and our press release also carries my submission on this. I think that work from home concept is not going to be a very heavy impact. I think the biggest challenge on work from home is going to be with occupiers, not with the developers. How are they going to create efficiency from employees working from home is going to be a bigger challenge than for occupiers being able to generate demand for space. Because that, as I mentioned to you, is actually getting a bigger benefit because of the de-densification phenomenon, right? So I think there are five factors that we need to understand on commercial real estate in this post-COVID era. I think the most important part we need to understand is the kind of resilience that India has built, right? India has built a very strong resilience compared to any other country in the world, and I would say especially the IT, the IT or the tech markets like Bangalore and Hyderabad, especially Bangalore, I'll say, we stood up much better to the challenge. So crisis management has been good. The response levels from normal citizens has been very good. Professionals have delivered working from home. I think that has given a lot of confidence to occupiers and senior management professionals in international companies, which is going to make Bangalore and these kind of Bangalore, Hyderabad far more attractive. As a destination, office destination, only sets it up at a much higher level. The second part is actually looking at how technology role will be enhanced in our lives. Whether it is a professional life or personal lives. So I think where does technology get created? Technology gets created mostly in India. So I think again, when you want to create technology in India, you need office spaces, right? And work from home will only serve a certain level of technology services. It cannot go to higher level confidential work, etc. So what will happen is that we will see much more streams of technology and technology enhancement of current streams taking place. Therefore, more office space will be needed. Third thing is, the what I call the reshoring. The reshoring from China is now a phenomenon. In fact, I said it on day one that this is going to happen very quickly and is actually playing out, and it's going to happen very fast in the IT sector. With India being the biggest beneficiary in the IT sector. In manufacturing, of course, India will be one of the beneficiaries. There are other countries who will also benefit from this reshoring phenomenon in manufacturing. But again, because of manufacturing, you create more jobs. When you create more jobs, you need more office space, and of course, you need more residential apartments, etc. So I think it is job creative phenomenon very clearly. I don't think that there is a very big concern out there as far as job creation is concerned in the long term. And I also mentioned to you the de-densification part. So de-densification um, is going to be another big event that is going to play out. And riding above all this, as far as demand and economy of demand is concerned, is going to be the depreciation of the Indian rupee. You see, we've had the biggest bull run for commercial real estate in the last 6-7 years, right? Especially in the five years, I would say. And in that 5-year period, we did not see the rupee depreciate as much. So pretty much it was, we've seen only about 2-3% depreciation versus a historic depreciation of about 5 to 7%. So what we are going to witness now is we are going to see a much deeper depreciation of the rupee playing out, obviously because of the fiscal deficit that India is going to be facing due to the stimulus, etc., that is being delivered. So I think the weaker rupee makes the office space much more affordable. It is pegged against that dollar per square foot rent. I think that is going to play out very strongly. Very, very important factor in bringing to fore again the importance of commercial reality in India. So I think these five factors are very, very important, and they're going to play out post this COVID world. But I think this is post 2020. We are talking about 2020 onwards, 2021 onwards. 2020 is going to be a maintenance zone, for lack of a better term. We're going to see a lot of players trying to hang in there, trying to retain their tenancies, trying to ensure that occupiers are satisfied, levels of maintenance are very high, less amount of complaints, high safety and security, etc. So maintaining 2020 is the challenge. Growth really is going to start from 2021, and I have already mentioned the five factors of growth, and also you can say blunted or rather superseded the adverse impact that is being so very commonly stated about work from home.
But Mr. Vishal, won't we see the buying pattern of a bigger brand, like how they used to purchase a 10,000 square feet space. Maybe now they will purchase more of a 5,000 square feet space because keeping a work from home operation also in mind. Won't such pattern you see happening, or won't we witness this soon? Because you never know, this crisis can repeat again. This is what everyone's is discussing about.
No, that's what I mentioned to you, that work from home cannot be happen. You cannot have 80-90% of your people working from home. It is not going to be possible. Everybody, actually, the people you talk to, keep on saying the same thing. I'm writing a paper actually on this subject, and probably next week I'll share it with you. It's linked to an economic theory. Why work from home can succeed to an extent, but not fully. It is linked to how many rides you can take on a roller coaster, right? In an hour. How many will you enjoy out of that? So efficiency levels are not going to remain the same for 100% of the workforce for 100% of the time. It's not possible to do that. You cannot achieve the level of motivation. If that had been the case today, without having, or until the COVID-19 issue started, why were big companies actually trying to have big events in their offices? Why would an American company have beer weekends on a Friday night? Because they want to motivate employees, right? They want people to come together. But if you keep people at home, don't bring them together, how will you get a collaboration effort? How will you get innovation out? How will you motivate people? So you need to get people energized. This is one factor that will play out. This is a risk mitigation factor that the occupiers will like to exercise. But it's to an extent. What they are going to do, in my view, is to be prepared for the future in case this happens again. So they've built the infrastructure to actually transfer jobs straight to to the homes. Okay, there'll be a level of preparedness where it was not existing today or yesterday when this problem started. We were not prepared for this, but now people or companies will be prepared to transfer work from home, and therefore I think the transfer of work from home for a short period of time will be far more successful. But in the long term or on a sustainable basis, it will be majority still working from office.
So Riza, for residential, I wanted to know, like right now, people were buying 600 square feet, 650 square feet, and they were pretty, in metro cities especially, they were pretty practical, minimalistic, and it was the space which everyone were okay with. But do you see the buying pattern will now change in terms of now people asking for 2.5 BHK, 3.5 BHK, maybe 750, 800 square feet? Will we see this kind of drastic change happening? Because as we were discussing with Mr. Vishal also, like work from home is something which made people think, even if in 55 days where people are staying in lockdown, they want a bigger space. Maybe a zero point 0.5 BHK might help to bring that kind of, space utility, or they can put extra for themselves. Will we be seeing such pattern happening?
Uh, yeah. So, hi, Kritika, and hello to all the viewers and the panelists as well. And I would like to start off by saying that today we are part of the world's largest ever work from home experiment. And this has brought the most dramatic disruption to office working culture in our lifetimes. So, I would corroborate with what Vishal is saying and say that there is no immediate downturn in the office market, and now social distancing is now part of our collective vocabulary, and working from home is also almost become the new normal, right? But with this entire COVID-19 situation, I think developers around the world today are being forced to introduce innovation into their co-product with a design that responds to a very changing world. And this will not just affect residential real estate. I would think that all real estate asset classes will react very differently, and you cannot cast a single blanket view over each of them. I think every vertical is going to respond very differently to this. And this crisis has made people realize the value of a home more than anything else, right? And therefore, I would say that people will try to make their spaces more functional, more fluid in their purposes. And like you said, as this connected economy kind of acclimatizes, I think offices and residents will no longer be an afterthought. Their residences will have a home office, will no longer have a home at office, but an office at home, right? Now, from a luxury perspective, everything, Embassy is a large luxury residential player, and we have been integrating home offices along with our residential products from way back in 1995 almost. And then when we reintroduced our luxury category back in 2012, again, we integrated the concept of the home offices. But in the mid-segment category, I think that as more and more people are going to start working from home, we need to find ways to combine living areas with workspaces. So, but we should be careful not to decrease the quality of either space, right? So, since space is the factor, it's limited in most views, flexibility will be key, right? Now, how can a dining room transform itself into a workspace using, say, flexible partitions, for example? Now, I would say that high-rise buildings were originally designed to organize as many people as possible in one place. Health and hygiene were not a consideration, but in times of this pandemic now, apart from this whole concept of home office, I would say that it is necessary to reduce contact with everything that is used in multi-story buildings. So right from your elevators, elevator buttons, door handles, surfaces, and above all, your neighbors as well. And today, real estate developers, like you said, have a golden opportunity to make smart homes with offices, with study rooms. Say like, your 2 BHK, which is your most preferred category in a city like Bangalore, would potentially move to 2.5 BHK. A 3 BHK may move to 3.5 BHK. But it won't end there. I would say that, the entry, arrival experience, right from how deliveries are planned, all of which will have to be enhanced with the use of technology. And the focus is now going to be all about healthy home design, about natural ventilation, uh, uh, about the science of light. I think spatial planning of common areas, circulation, programming, the influence of mental and physical health in design is going to increase tenfold. And again, corroborating with what Vishal said, I would say that we are humans. We still need connection. We need social activity. And there will always be a need for communal spaces. So co-working spaces in clubs, in the clubhouses of these buildings will start becoming the new norm. And I think builders will definitely look at things like urban planning, conservation of energy. How do you create biophilic design, right? How do you integrate green with buildings? The conservation of all natural resources, and of course, the aspect of sourcing locally.
So, Sheshav, the buying aspiration, would you agree, would change the dynamics of how home buyers are going to prefer more of a 0.5 BHK? What's your take on that?
So I think that probably the trend, or in my sense, what we are actually seeing since the sales from lockdown, maybe a bit beyond that point. So we've probably seen about 500 homes sold in the last 40 odd days. And when I go through that data, you're finding some interesting parts. One, I think almost 95% of the homes are sold in integrated developments. People are preferring developments now which have a combination of a community. You have the essential services because you saw the value of it. Medical clinics, pharmacies, retail. So how was the community run? Because that all mattered a lot. So first, the actual home buying pattern we're seeing is far more integrated, and virtually almost an equal number bought ready homes. So I think that is the bigger first trend that we are seeing on the buying pattern over the last 500 sales. And it is quite different than what happened, let's say, pre-March. Huge jump towards integrated, huge jump towards ready. I think second is, of course, given a choice, if I could, instead of a 2-bedroom, buy 2.5, of course, I would do that now. Ultimately comes down to affordability. Can you afford that extra half bedroom? So what could happen? You can make a trade-off. You move one suburb or that much, 5 kilometers further from the city center, where let's say the prices go down. So in a Mumbai context, we are going to continue to see far more homes being bought in the suburban areas like Thane or a Kalyan Dombivli or a Navi Mumbai. Because for that same money, instead of a 2-bedroom, I can buy a 2.5. So with that as a second decision factor, you will start seeing more and more people buying in these townships and slightly bigger homes than out there to meet this part. And I think it plays out because if you're going to, let's say, go to the office in shifts, may not be 100% work from home, you go in shifts. The pressure of I have to be in the city center because of traffic, travel greatly reduces. So you're going to see more and more acceptance saying that now let me make my decision on where I want to live and then the other. Third, if I may add, I think to this point, the other trend I believe we will see from an Indian context. Business continuity risk is going to be there now. You'll plan it in different ways, like Vishal talked about, or other manners will be there. Social distancing pressure, that's not going to go away. When you start thinking and planning for this for about, let's say, the next 12, 18 months, there will be behavioral change. People may not want to travel in public transport. You don't want to, you will have to run in shifts because of social distancing. So I think one of the things you're probably going to start seeing is the office moving away from one central location in only a pure business district to more decentralized. Come closer to where your employees are. You got to travel less, right? So again, that moves it towards saying that. So I believe that there will be this WFH, which is this work from home, but there will be also this other theme, which is WFH or walk from home, right? Can the developments of the future be ones where you really make live, learn, work, play come together? And if you can, then the ability to walk, whether it's to your school for your kids, to these offices, which probably will get decentralized, come closer to your essentials like retail, pharmacy, I think that will matter a lot. And I believe that will be a bigger trend in a context like India, where use of public transport is required for 90% of the people. We don't all drive by car, trains, buses. There is no way you can social distance in them. So I believe this will become another big trend that will happen going forward.
No, I agree with you. So as to your integrated development, we'll come back to that. I wanted to ask Ismail, like earlier in Indian market for co-living, we had seen how the money was dictating over the experience. Will we see a new dawn happening where experience would be dictating the co-living side, keeping in mind work from home being the new feature of amenity, keeping in mind the hygiene being the most important factor now? Also, I wanted to know with regards to co-living, will pandemic give a boost to co-living market, or will it be where we see people going back to the traditional four-wall home? These things I want to know with these two. Like, one is with your experience-wise. Second was about the market itself. Will this give a boost to co-living market?
Right. So I think the first point, let me touch the first point about the experience part of it, right? So I think as the other panelists have also highlighted, a couple of very important aspects of the experience part is going to be the lesser density part, as we spoke about the office spaces as well. The other thing is the sanitization part of it. So see, typically the co-living spaces in the recent times have been looking at experience from a very exaggerated point of view, giving that wow factor in the living area. But I think that wow factor is going to shift towards more of better hygiene, better distancing, and better spaces, rather than having that exorbitant wow factor in the space itself. I think yes, it is going to be a very, very important factor to be able to sanitize, to be able to maintain that hygiene, and most importantly, also add to that little bit amount of space that will add on to your study table and chair, along with a laptop desk or books and stuff like that, which typically does not it didn't add as a very important factor in the past, because living was considered as a place where you will crash down and maybe go back to office and work, right? So that's going to definitely have a shift. From the other question on the the growth aspect itself, whether this particular area is going to grow, and how do we look at it from that angle? So I see two again a couple of items over there. First thing is, as Seshav rightly pointed out, the dispersed offices is going to the walk from home thing is probably going to be very, very important factor going forward. And assuming that's also going to be something that people are going to look at. Earlier, our co-living places that we used to concentrate on, especially from the Nestaway perspective, was in and around the area of where the the commercial establishments are there. For example, if there is a tech park around a area, then you'll have a lot of co-living spaces around that area itself, right? So that particular real estate of that particular area is actually booming with respect to both co-living and commercial space. However, now with dispersed thing, maybe a area like which is 5 to 10 kilometers away from a hardcore commercial space is also going to start having smaller office spaces for people to work from. And the co-living and the residential real estate market itself, from the renting perspective, that itself will start picking up in that particular area is what my thought process is. To add to it, it will probably start percolating towards tier 2 cities as well. It may start happening that people living in people having offices in Bangalore may have people working from Mysore as well, and maybe Mysore or a Kanakpura or a Devanalli kind of an area where people were not really having active offices around, will probably start working out of those spaces. So I think it is from the growth perspective, the spread may actually be a good part from the industry point of view. People, the real estate itself will spread across for the market perspective. However, the final point I wanted to make was about all of it is about the cost, right? I think Saishav also touched to that point, wherein people opting for a 2.5 BHK, for example, will probably take it 5 to 10 kilometers away from what they would have earlier planned. And I think that's going to affect the rental markets as well. If it's going to be, people are not going to be affording a very high rental house or a co-living space, that's going to also shift towards slightly lesser rented areas and a bigger space. So I see both mixed areas of opportunity as well as challenges. But I think the best judge is going to be time. We'll have to wait and watch for some time to see how this pans out in general.
Great. So I wanted to ask this question from Arnav and Amit, that in co-working space, Arnav, starting from you, will the whole open seating layout will see a shift towards more private space consumption?
So good afternoon all. As Vishal and Riza, as well as Ismail and Sheshav have mentioned, that the whole purpose of being in an office space or in any other community is the community angle as such. So I don't think it will lead to a lot of private offices per se. From a space utilization perspective, as Vishal mentioned, in commercial real estate, we look at 1% to 70, which might increase to 1:20. Now, this includes your conference area utilization, your meeting room utilization as such. It's not one person and the workspace area, right? So majority, like at WeWork, our community areas are very well designed and very well defined per se. And we are practically at a ratio of 1:80 to 1:120 in some cases. So if you're maintaining the social distancing norms in the private areas, what one needs to do within the office space to increase the space utilization for person to person depends on the end user. But having said that, the intention of our spaces is for people to mingle and for people to collaborate and to enhance the community experience. And that is being well taken care of in the common areas as such.
Amit, you would like to add anything to that?
Sure. So, Kritika, thank you for organizing this, and it's great to be here. I think the way we at least approach it is, Kritika, in the short term, there's a lot of behavioral change happening, right? So clearly, even before this, a lot of our business was enterprise focused, and as a result, our cabins, which could be a 4-seater or could be a 200-seater, that's a private space that somebody has taken from us, was already existing. So our business did not have a lot of open seating, which are, where you have to share a desk with a stranger who's not part of the same company. So clearly we see that trend will continue. I think people will be very wary of sitting next to somebody that they're not are not knowing and clearly are not part of the same organization. I think the other part that we clearly see is that the centers will have to follow social distancing, and we will have to redesign. Now, obviously, social distancing, everybody is talking from a de-densification perspective. But I think in addition to that, there will be a lot of other design changes that will have to come into play for this to work. Because, today it started off with 3 feet difference. Now they're saying 6. Who knows, it grows or becomes smaller, right? So clearly, I think flexibility will be one that will become key, and the ability to change the layouts on the go, on the fly, as and when these situations get created, I think will become a key part of the whole process. Just to add to earlier discussions on work from home, I think at least the way we believe is that today the penetration in India is less than 1% of the total white collar workforce. That probably will go to about 10 to 12%. And I think 3 elements will happen, right? One, work from home will become, and as Sheshav and Reza and others have said, is clearly going to be something that both the employee and the employer will have to formulate as part of their real estate strategy. Second, I think work near home will become a phenomenon, because clearly today, I think the commute time, is a choice that everybody has understood, that why should I waste 3 hours every day in commute, right? What's the worth of going there when I can be as productive from home? So work near home, both from an employer standpoint, from business continuity, also from the employee standpoint of not wasting time in commute, will become critical. And the third element is the office will have to be worth it for people to show up for doing that 2 hour commute, right? Yes, I do understand the community aspect. I totally agree with Arnav. I agree with Vishal that, there is an element of, engagement that happens, which is face to face. You can't do it remotely, but the offices will have to make it worth for people to travel. And if that is not happening, then I will not spend that 2 hours to go to an office just to, get my work done.
No, I agree with you, Amit. So this is where I wanted to ask Mr. Vishal that probably can this happen that a bigger brands will have a headquarter be in Bandra and smaller units be in Borivali, Thane, or Navi Mumbai? Can we have these small centers coming up soon, so that even what we have seen, that even during this lockdown, working from home has been efficient. People have realized how much time they can save, and having these small centers nearby can help employees to collaborate. Even the functioning of the company can still happen. So do you see this kind of shift is going to take place when it comes to smaller units?
So what I tend not to just go on to one extreme end. So that is one trend that will certainly take shape in terms of having what we call satellite offices. So there will be a central HQ, you'll have a hub, and then you'll have a spoke sort of a setup. That said, that works for a company which has got, let us say, in a city like Bangalore, which is the biggest office market. Say, let's say a company has 5,000 employees. When you have 5,000 employees, means you require about in the current context, about 4.5 to 5 lakh square feet of space. Okay, so that you can distribute, etc. But let us take the example of a very large occupier, somebody who has 50,000, 70,000, 80,000 people working in one city, and there are names, not one name. There are names like that in Bangalore, okay, who have actually been looking at consolidating. So I think another phenomenon is going to take place, which will de-risk their current position in campuses in the following manner. Just picture this now. There is a campus which has 10 buildings, and one or two are occupied by one particular occupier, and the same occupier has got another couple of buildings in another campus. In that manner, they've got a scattered presence across the city. So one is that they would like to maintain a scattered presence, like the satellite offices, but they will take it to the residential areas so that it is work from home, like everybody was rightly mentioning. But the other trend that can also happen, to support that, you need to have a hub, right? So what they will try to do is, instead of having a large scattered presence, they will try to consolidate that into one controllable facility by themselves, not being left to everybody, either the developer or the developer service company, etc. They would like to take charge of that entire setup. So instead of having, say, 6 buildings, which covers 50% of your working population in 3 or 4 locations. They'll bring those 6 buildings together and have your 50% of the population working together within their control. Everything from end to end is managed by them. So, and the rest of the 50% or 30%, as they choose to be, can work in satellite offices. So there is a dynamism that is going to take place. I think it is an evolving situation, and let us not forget that people are already in long-term leases. You see, we operate in 9-year leases plus. Okay, so people are already within that lock-in period or lease period, etc. So it's not very easy to just shift from one place to the other. They already invested. Going forward, how they will expand is to be seen. So these are the aspects that they will consider, in my opinion. Hub and spoke, plus also a combination of consolidation within their control and having satellite offices.
I agree. So, Sheshav, as you were saying with regards to integrated development and the mixed development, where Mr. Vishal has said, yes, there are possibility of those satellite offices coming up. There are possibility of these smaller units coming near the residential areas. So, will upcoming projects will have more of such commercial spaces? As you mentioned, the integrated development, will we be seeing any drastic changes happening to that?
I think this trend has been there for a while now, right? So we as a developer, we focus a lot on townships, mid-income, affordable, and let's say premium housing is anyway 70% of our portfolio now. In these townships, we always had this notion of work, live, learn, play. How much of the four can you get together? Even some of our city projects have the same notion. I think the ultimate is when you can get all four elements together, which is offices, residential, schools, and then the remaining social ecosystem, retail, parks, etc. And they've been very, very successful. So for example, one of the largest developments in the country is Palava, which is a private development. We now have about 1 lakh people staying there, and it is an example of work, live, learn, play. So we are going, I think this particular pandemic is going to further make more developments go in that direction. We already have it in our Thane developments. I can see that happening in our other developments also going forward. So yes, a very large trend.
Riza, I wanted to know like how Sheshav also pointed out this large development will take place. So as an amenity, like how we are having amenities in all these integrated developments, will there be a new amenity feature as such to provide for the residents? Yes, developers can collaborate with co-working, which I will come back on that later. But will developers also come up with such amenity where residents can easily sit, relax, and do their work rather than working from home? Will that be integrated in those projects?
I think I mentioned this in my first conversation as well. I would say that co-working, for example, in clubs might be an amenity that most developers will continue to provide and will consider providing given today's scenario. And just to corroborate and go back to where Vishal was, I would say that with more people working remotely, companies will open regional hubs, right, and provide access to co-working spaces, because public transportation is something that is going to be a challenge. People are not going to take this up immediately. So they are going to start asking, the employers are going to ask employees to take up, for example, a space at a co-working center to begin with. So now if this can be provided within a residential development, great. But for those who do not have access to such developments, co-working, I'm assuming would definitely be on the uptick. And to just go back to your earlier point as well, I would say that from a housing standpoint, there could be a shift in buying markets, right? Where people will start looking at secondary cities and more remote locations that offer them the space, because the closer you are to the city center, the more expensive your home is going to become. So people may start moving away. And definitely, I mean, people are going to look for more controlled, more tech-enabled, safe and sustainable ecosystems, and that they don't need to venture out from. To corroborate with what Sheshav said as well, anything that can give easy access to public infrastructure, offices, schools, hospital, recreational areas, places of worship, So I would say there would be a high demand for products like integrated townships in tier 2 cities as well, and peri-urban areas where the luxury of space, land will be higher as compared to metros, while scoring on the affordability index as well. But these will have to be managed with a very strong facility management solution. This is something that we provide for all our residential developments. We have a separate facility management arm called Embassy Services, which guarantee the safety and wellness of all residents. So this is going to be extremely critical to ensure this continuity and there is no discontinuation of any sort of service which is being provided. Apart from that, I would say that residential real estate is definitely going to become more specialized with local and cultural differences, influencing exactly how this evolves, right? Right from young professional to seniors. So apart from how space utilization, how home formats are going to be rethought, we are positively going to see an emergence of specialized asset classes like co-living and senior living, I would say, because senior living would be something that, you know, a lot of seniors today are being inconvenienced. There's a huge population. While India remains a young population at hand, we're also saying that the north part of our market, you know, the seniors, they're going to be about 500 million in our population by the year 2030. If that's going to be the case, then specialized asset classes like senior living, where there is a community engagement, a program in place, will be very, very important.
So Amit, coming to this, my question for the co-working area is that if the integrated township is the future, where all these things will be integrated so people can have these facilities around, when it comes to co-working, will co-working collaborate with developers? Do we see this future trend happening so that co-working space is also near your resident area and more of collaboration like this are going to happen with developers, so that even if someone do not want to travel, like how we are discussing walk to work, so will this bring a nice shift to the co-working space coming towards the residential area?
Yeah, so this is something that we discussed. I mean, and we've been having our conversations within the offices as well to bring co-working closer to our residential hubs as well, right? So smaller formats, smaller setups where people can actually step out from their place of work, place of residence, and just walk across and access a co-working facility to be able to be in touch with offices. I think today our PG market, for example, I mean, like what I'm sure Ismail would agree, you know, the people are living in extremely dismal conditions. I mean, they have very poor access to broadband, for example, something as simple as broadband to begin with, right? And for companies, this is a major cause of concern. So for the outsourcing industry, for anyone who works with IP rights, especially for BFSI services, etc., it's going to be important to be able to work out of an organized space rather than just being able to work from home in the future as well. So now that's something that, you know, an association may work. We can provide those facilities as a developer within a residential community, but this could be a thought that the associations and in corroboration with companies may come up with as well.
So Amit, associations can work. So what is your take in this?
So, Kritika, I think from the start, when we started the business in 2015, almost today 60% of our portfolio is in partnership with the landlords, right? So that has been a key part of our strategy, where majority of our spaces today are in partnership with the landlords, and we have done extremely well. In fact, when people were asking for waivers, we were able to commit to our landlords where we were in partnerships, made them almost similar money that they were making over the last few months. So I think it's a proven model, and we have been very clear that I think just like developers don't operate banks, they don't operate hotels themselves. I think from our standpoint, we see as co-working operators as having the expertise to service the ultimate customer. And I think in that scenario, we will continue to see that trend. I think it's a model that will work well with the integrated development that's been talked about. It's a model that will work well even if you are talking about, you know, remote locations or locations near residential hubs. And clearly, we've already done it in the CBD markets, right? We are present in 70 centers across 10 cities. So clearly, we know that the CBD part of co-working works well. I think as the environment comes back and stabilizes, and people either we find a vaccine or we get over the fear in the short term till we find the vaccine. I think clearly what we will see is a lot more focus on co-working, because I think three things that will work from a occupier standpoint, right? One, flexibility. And I'm not sure if my developer friends will be fast enough to offer a year-long lock-in, which we do, because flexibility is going to be key. Second, the occupiers coming back will be hard strapped for cash, right? Because capital will be constrained, and clearly they would want to convert their capital investments into an operating model. And third, they would need a network of spaces. Now, it's good to say that everybody will build their regional offices and satellite locations, but the need is today. You can't wait for it for a year to say, I will build a regional hub, right? It's today. So clearly, I think the co-working players that are networked and have a large network similar to ourselves will see a lot of uptick, because people will require for business continuity to be able to provide those spaces. So yes, we are all on for partnering with our developer friends.
Arnav, in this, I wanted to know how we discussed satellite offices coming nearby, smaller units need to come nearby. And we know for sure all these bigger brands, if they enter in these small units, co-working is the space for them to enter. So as Amit also said, collaboration, of course, with the developer is important. Even a developer needs to consider this. Don't you think we know a lot of WeWork in bigger brands are already there? Be Mahindra or be Godrej. A lot of people have already occupied those spaces, and then these smaller units will be again a new trend for co-working to be near the residence area. So this trend, how it's going to uprise and how the collaboration with developers will happen. What's your take on that?
Yeah, as Amit mentioned, I think the most important part is flexibility and convenience, right? And when you merge that with basically the health, safety, and hygiene factor that each employee as well as employer will be looking at, it makes things easier. With players like us, when you have around 12 buildings across the city, the hub and spoke model already comes into play as such, because you're active in any micro market within the city. From a collaboration perspective, I've always been game for being a part of a larger development, because I think co-working should not be considered as commercial space. It should be a hybrid of retail and hospitality. It adds value to a resident's requirements and needs from an office space perspective. And what we've realized in this duration of the lockdown, that work from home is great, but people need a little bit of an official environment also to work from, just to get that break from and the monotony of being within the house. Now, I think even the companies, I think, will have to revisit a lot in terms of their space requirement and how they're looking at traditional real estate absorption. And the flexibility part will come in play real strong in the next at least 6 to 12 months kind of scenario. And that's where the co-working players will be able to assist the existing corporate requirements. There will also be a requirement in terms of specialized office spaces, because the transition would be a little bit slow. People will still be keen on having the same kind of aspects that they expect in their natural office space, and there will need to be a little bit of a collaboration between these enterprises from a customization perspective, so that it's not a shocker to them to get into a collaborative space, and the ease of movement from the traditional office to co-working is a little bit consistent.
So when it comes to customization, as you pointed out, a lot of people, once they come back to their workspace, yes, there will be changes happening. This is where my question comes to co-living and co-working. Will the services that you provide currently, in terms of cost, can we see an increase? Because a lot of people will demand, we need social distances, we want proper hygiene, we want more facilities so that we feel safe and everything. But in both sectors, be co-living and co-working, will we see a change in the package of the pricing? They'll be a bit more expensive, because as we said, in Indian mindset, we want in a small amount everything. But do we change this cost optimization that we say we are going to provide you all of these facilities, but the price is going to increase now?
So see, layout of workstation and production areas will be revisited for sure, right? And it will be based on the company's particular requirement. But the opportunity here is companies might save on rent and capital expenditure as well as maintenance costs, because I think the occupiers also will need to consider flexible working schedule based on rostered days, thereby like trying to reduce the space requirement as such and still keeping the whole concept modular in nature. So and the same logic goes with a traditional office too, right? So as Vishal was mentioning that earlier, people were looking at 1:70. Today they might look at 1:120. So the real estate cost will go up. The capital cost will go up to ensure that one person is utilizing that additional space. And as Amit mentioned in when he was speaking, that what a co-working space is giving you is the flexibility and the option of not investing that capital, and that capital being still. And like, I can only talk about WeWork, but we are modular in the true sense, right? So like if you have a modular workstation, we have raised flooring, we have movable furniture. So to even change the requirements or the layout in terms of the requirements of the client doesn't take too much time. It just requires a little bit of reconfiguration of the furniture within the space. Doesn't require additional capital because of the raised flooring. Your networking can be brought in easily, so the time spent is lesser, and that again is a cost saved.
Kritika, we are taking a bit of a different tact, right? I think our approach was a bit more holistic. We understand that currently the government guidelines mandates a 33% occupancy maximum, right? Maybe it'll go up to 50%. So our approach with our clients was threefold. We said, well, we can help you situate in our core center, which is your base center, right, where you can accommodate, let's say, 30 to 50% of your workforce, depending on what the guidelines is. The other, we are willing to accommodate people in locations which are closer to their staff, where their employees stay, right? So with having a distributed network of 70 spaces, we can afford to do that. And then we today just launched Office at Home, right? So we have our own product that basically helps our customers set up their employees at home, because clearly when we all got the news in March that this was a big pandemic, and was affecting India in multiple ways, we all went back. But majority of the people at home do not even have an ergonomic chair or a desk, right? You can see it even when we are on this call. Some are on a desk and a chair, and some are not, right? And so clearly it becomes a challenge to situate that, and our Office at Home solution does that for our customers. So rather than saying, let me talk about a discount, let me just talk about excess space or less space, it's about finding a solution, right? Because at the end of the day, the customer, which is our occupier, ultimately wants the solution. Cost, everybody will understand, right? If you're occupying at 70 square feet or 120 square feet, there is a differential. It's all related to the per square foot cost. Every occupier also understands that very well. But rather than closing that discussion, our approach was, let me find you a solution, and we have been very successful. In fact, many of our customers are already signed on for the Office at Home product. So I think that's the way we are at least approaching it.
So coming to that, Ismail, in co-living, like currently the brands were optimizing the spaces a lot. Like be in a kitchen, a person is putting a bed, this is your, like all kind of optimization of the space was happening. But when it comes to now, like how we discussed, the experience will now matter, the hygiene will matter. So in this, will co-living will be a bit of expensive when it comes to cost? Because to accommodate all these features, how co-living will change their dynamics when it comes to cost optimization?
So from the co-living perspective, there are two aspects to the cost, right? One is the cost of the space itself. The bigger the space that you have, the higher the cost that you have to shell out, right? That's one part of it. The other part of it is obviously about the kind of facilities that we provide inside the space. You may provide a very flashy bed with a flashy mattress, and a lot of common area will have a big television or some sort of a flashy things like a billiard table and stuff like that, right? So that also adds to a lot of cost with respect to what people can afford at a co-living place. What I see is that, with the social distancing norm and the safety per se, I mean, health hazard is the biggest thing that we can think about. So the space is going to be very, very critical, not as much the facilities, right? So I also see a trend of people starting to opt for. I mean, we have already been seeing it over the last year or so, where people love to have a 1 BHK rather than a single room and a bathroom, just to crash at one place. If you can have lesser facilities in a 1 BHK kind of a place, and maybe two friends share it, a group of friends sharing a particular house, it becomes a lot more safe and secure from their perspective, rather than sharing a room with two people, because two individuals who are not really known to each other, that brings in the an iota of doubt in people's mind. No, can I share my room with this particular individual or not, and stuff like that. So that I think is going to shift. A lot of our solutions that we offer at Nestaway, a 3 BHK house is rented out as 3 individual rooms today, rather than rented out as 6 individual beds with 2 people in each room, kind of a solution, right? So the space of individual is going to be very, very important. So that's where a person is probably going to invest more rather than the facilities part of it. Of course, the hygiene is the second part. I mean, I can compare it with, say, people who were earlier ordering pizzas and burgers will probably go back to dal rotis now, right? So your hygiene and your hand wash, keeping your premises clean, your maids and the kind of the service that they provide, the hospitality part of it, that's going to be more important than the flashy part of the experience at the co-living spaces. I think it's going to be a balance of where you spend the money rather than increase or decrease the budget either ways.
No, I agree. So, Sheshav, cost we are discussing in terms of co-working and co-living, but in cost, we are looking right now, a lot of real estate developers are doing, price cutting and slashes or discount, like refundable, the payment terms, everything is getting changed. But post-COVID, how do you see the residential sector is going to come up?
So I think two parts. First is, as I said, integrated developments, and second is ready homes. Uh, I think the fear factor, the discomfort with under construction will be higher. Developer brand will matter even more. So because you're seeing this migrant labor issue. If we are going to have this challenge, how our project is going to get completed, it's going to take longer. So you're going to find this one big thing about, I just have to get a ready home. I think second thing is that over the last few years, this whole concept of it's much better to rent, financial products, investment out there. I think a lot of those views have changed in the last 2-3 months. I think there is a need for everything. A home is a safety thing. You want to own that one home because it's important for your own financial diversification. So you have your home, you have your stocks, you have your gold. It's not all about just saying that I would, it's not required. So I think that's the second change I'm seeing of how do you do that. And will only increase more after COVID, where more people will want to own at least that one home first and secure themselves. In terms of, and third is far greater amount of demand in the township, middle income, affordable segment. I think luxury will take some time because that particular segment has probably got a little more spooked, at least in the Mumbai context, I would say. I don't know about Bangalore as well. And so there, it'll take some time. There'll be a little stalemate for 2 or 3 months. And then after that, people will come back to saying that, okay, you require a home because, again, as a financial asset, it has its own place now as diversification. Of course, third is the interest rate deduction. Developers will help with payment plans. These are things that you do anyway to basically make it, to address the core problem. It's not necessarily the price. Sometimes it's just about how much you can pay upfront. Sometimes it is how much you can pay EMI while I do up the house. So all of those will just further make it simpler for the buyer. I actually believe that generally residential trends will remain quite good. But again, consolidate very much to ready and large developers.
Riza, what's your take on the luxury housing? Post-COVID, how luxury housing sector will come up?
So that's an interesting question. See, again, to go back, I think ready to move in homes will continue to see an uptick. Okay, especially even in luxury residential. The supply constraint is severe in luxury, right? I mean, no developers are really doing too many luxury products these days. So the inventory continues to remain fairly static. As developers move away from doing luxury housing, the available inventory that's available in the market is only going to increase. But I would say that our macros, our business macros still fundamentally remain extremely strong, right? There is a whole concept of the shifting family structures. I think Indian joint family has given way to nuclear households, what we define as a couple or a single person with or without children. So with the proportion of nuclear households being on the rise and it's projected to increase by 74%, I would say that people would continue to look for homes, irrespective of whether it's luxury or it's a mid-income home. Also, the fact of continuing urbanization, right? 10 million people migrating to cities every year, about 40% of India's population will be living in urban areas by 2030. Now, if that is a fact, I would say that homes will continue to be something that a luxury, someone who's looking for a luxury product or someone who's looking for a mid-segment home or an affordable home, those are the factors that we need to consider. Limited inventory being introduced in the market by developers. The available ready-to-move-in homes are seeing a very sharp rise in interest and especially post this lockdown period. Because even during this time, HNIs are saying that, especially with this whole aspect of equity markets taking a big toss in the last few months, Sensex lost almost 10,000 points in a month. And in the last Knight Frank survey that we studied, we are saying that 27% of HNIs continue to invest in luxury homes or in real estate as such, because where is the safety today in financial instruments, right? So all these factors will continue to see an interest from the luxury markets as well. But I would continue to tell the viewers that decisions should not be based on pure discounts that are available today. You can walk to a developer probably and get the best discounts, but please attach due importance to the credibility of the developer, the track record of delivery, location, how relevant is the product, what is the USP of the product, right? Is it a future ready product, for instance? A location that might be important today may not be important tomorrow. For example, in a city like Bangalore, north is the way to go. All your office markets are relocating to that location. So all of this have to be weighed in before arriving at a decision.
So, Mr. Vishal, this would be my last question. So, I want to know from your side as well how the commercial sector will come up post-COVID. Like we had discussed what kind of few changes might occur, but completely overall how this sector is going to now come up in terms of the cost-wise, in terms of the demand and everything. If you could just tell us about this sector coming up post-COVID.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier in my first point of discussion, uh, from 2021, I believe that the sector will remain, or the strength of the sector will remain intact. Of course, we won't see the tearing growth immediately in 2021, but thereon we will see normalcy returning to the sector, which means that we will have a strong trajectory upwards. If you look at the last 3 years, we've already seen very high growth levels in absorption. We believe that we won't take off from where we left, but certainly we will take off from an average of the last 3 years, and we will continue on that trajectory. Even if this COVID situation had not happened, we were already in a very high level of absorption. Last year, absorption was more than 60 million square feet, which was 30% plus growth over the previous year. So growing at 30-40% every year is not a sustainable growth rate in any case. So now this has brought in an artificial sort of a speed breaker. Therefore, 2020 is pretty much just a maintenance year. And 2021, for the 5 factors that I mentioned, and I'll repeat, the importance of technology will only enhance. Therefore, India will be a much stronger destination. Technology development takes place from India, and supports the corporations in the US and other parts of the world. India's response, and in particular Bangalore's response to this crisis, has been far better than any part of the world. We've been able to socially respond very well, and also professionally, rise above the crisis and the constraints, and actually continued our work and delivered to the best extent possible. And I think it is probably one of the highest efficiencies in the world. The third is, of course, like I mentioned, the de-densification part, and that has been discussed quite a bit. De-densification is across micro markets, that is not having too much of density in one single market, but having a hub and spoke model, and also de-densification within the office. Therefore, more space per seat, which means more demand for office space. The reshoring aspect, like I mentioned, manufacturing and IT services from China, and on top of that, depreciating Indian rupee, which will be far more at a far greater pace than we have seen in the last 5 years, which makes it far more cost effective for international companies. Work from home is a concept, but I think it is not to a limited extent. Maybe from 5-10%, the existing 5-10% extent, we will move to 20-25%. But again, like I mentioned, that's more than adequately offset by the de-densification phenomenon taking place in the office spaces. That said, I think because of the stringency and the level of planning that is required for office spaces changing, de-densification will also happen, for example, in common spaces. So you will need wider corridors. You will require more elevators, and you'll require more system installation. These will all mean higher capex. So therefore, there is a chance that capex may increase for commercial projects, and critical thing will be about getting labor to execute these projects. But we believe that the demand overall will continue, and on top of all of this situation that we are talking about, and I think across real estate classes, including industrial and warehousing, which I feel is going to really explode, investor interest from India as well as overseas in Indian real estate is only going to increase multifold. You see, the importance of Indian real estate as an investment class is really getting very strong, and we've been able to actually attract a lot of investments in the last 5 years, which has actually proven how important and how strategic a market India is as far as real estate is concerned, especially commercial real estate. And we've seen that happening in affordable housing, in industrial and warehousing, etc. So we believe that momentum will continue, and that will actually fuel the real estate story, and especially the commercial real estate story, that will remain intact as far as my reading of the subject is concerned. Now, I feel that it is important to actually touch upon one other important subject, that is how the real estate sector works. When you look at the various situations that we've come across, the various speed breakers, you can say slowdowns, etc. This, of course, this COVID situation is a once in a century sort of a situation. But if you look at the 2008-2009 Lehman Brothers crisis, then after that we saw the demonetization, we saw various other issues that we kept facing. It's essentially because I think real estate segment has got much lower resilience to counter or mitigate these events in the life cycle. Now, I think that starts with the way how way behind we are in the curve, and and we are also in a state of denial. So we don't want to accept that, okay, this is what we need to improve on, and therefore we must do these things and build better resilience to be able to handle these kind of events. So I think that, but of course, in the last 2-3 years, we've seen some change taking place. I would say maybe in 10-20% of the developers, but not, I would say, the universe. So universe of developers or the development community, I think, needs to really get stronger in the management processes, adopt more technology to run their business, be more strategic rather than opportunistic. For example, a project overrun can cost you 15 to 20%. Okay, but reducing salaries will only save you 2% or 3% overall. So I'm just saying that yes, at this point of time, maybe some companies would reduce salaries, justifiably so. But the most important thing is how I'm going to improve my efficiency. How am I going to ensure that there are minimum leakages in my business? I think that as a whole, the industry needs to adopt as a practice. We are seeing that process being, adopted in a very hesitating manner, and not with full throttle. I think the time has come that we go full throttle in strengthening our practices, our processes, and adopting technology so that we are able to be more we are more resilient to these kind of events that take place in our economic life cycles.
We have received great insight from all the sectors when it comes to product planning, and you can already see we have received 32 questions, but I'm sorry I won't be able to take all, so we will send to each respective speakers the questions. Let me just go through and give you a few questions which we can take right now, because 32 questions won't be possible, but it's great to know viewers love the insights that each sector could provide. So starting from Ismail, the question is, do you think now millennials will want to move to larger homes away from center of the city because of cost saving, considering work from home is the new norm?
Well, as Mr. Vishal and others also said, I think I think it's still a wait and watch situation with respect to work from home as a new norm. It may as well be a very temporary situation, right? So, considering that it could be a temporary situation, moving farther off would be a probably a choice of the individual depending upon case-to-case basis. Well, I still see, I still like the quote from Seshav about work from home, and I think that would probably be a new norm. And so residential and co-living, what do you call, renting market is very, very tightly linked to the commercial real estate itself, right? So wherever we are going to set up a commercial hub or a commercial a co-working facility, the residential rental around that area is definitely going to be a priority. So based upon that particular concept, if it's going to be more integrated townships, or if it's going to be more dispersed real estate that we are going to see, I think co-living is going to evolve around that area. So it's not a direct and definitive answer. Yes, it's a possibility, but then it's going to be a only time is going to tell about it, and I think it's going to change quite frequently. I mean, it's going to probably move from one place to the other, and then again go back to the square one. It could happen. It could happen because it's a rental. It's a temporary phenomenon. So we'll have to wait and watch, is what I would say.
Okay, this question is for the co-working sector. How do we see co-working evolving during the COVID times, considering the eradication still seems year on year and half ahead, subject to rollout of a vaccine post-testing? How will the co-working companies reassure the target audience on offering a safer workspace?
So I'll start, and Arnav, certainly you can chip in. But I think, Kritika, I think one of the key things for us is the safety and of our community members, right? So clearly, I think the level of focus we have on ensuring the hygiene, ensuring the services, which is the air conditioning system is upgraded, including the frequency of how we clean the spaces, how we access spaces, etc. I think that's paramount. So I can assure every one of our community members, and many of them have already come back to our spaces, that our safety of the our members is of paramount importance. But at the same time, as we have said, the coming back after kind of this crisis, and as we are dealing with it right now, meet us halfway there. That's our campaign, right? I mean, people, our members are spending only half of their time, 8 to 10 hours in our spaces, but outside what they're doing is as important, because I think so our focus has been on meet us halfway there, and we will together get over the crisis and ensure that our members, our employees, as well as our extended staff that take care of them is safe.
I'll just add on to what Amit mentioned, and I totally agree with him in terms of health, safety, and hygiene. We need to look at these problems together and drive solutions that will aid all of us, like as a whole, right? So let it be members, let it be landlords, all need to look at the problem together and find solutions which suit each one of us in our workspace.
So I have a question for the residential sector. The question is, what new changes should be adopted while planning a township development as compared to the other Asian markets like Hong Kong and Singapore? Shesha, Variza, anyone wants to take this?
Sheshav, I'll take a go at it and then you can probably chip in as well, right? All these urban agglomerations, I would say, are far away from city centers, which is probably one of the reasons why the rental model has worked for this affordable customer, so to speak, right? Because today customers do not want to spend on transportation costs. They may as well put that cost away towards education or towards the healthcare of their family. So they prefer to stay in rental versus moving away from the city and investing in an affordable home. So I think what the government could do is, or developers can also do, is to figure out how we can locate these kind of integrated townships within transit-oriented developments where you have access towards a mass rapid transport system. So that way, customers can actually save on unwanted expenditure, so to speak, right? And then they will also be encouraged to buy a home maybe slightly away from the city center, which can also decongest our metros a little bit. But this would be an important factor because today people do not want to commute, and they want to be as close to their workplace as possible.
I agree with what was shared. I think when I look at Singapore in particular, I think one thing they've done more and more is getting into this notion of mixed use, bringing in different types of use together. Ultimately, the only way to take care of infrastructure challenges, other things, is getting all of this together. If you keep zoning everything very far apart where everyone drives in, that's going to be difficult. Although I'm sure they must be having their own challenges because they've gone through this whole notion of very high density, going vertical, lots of public transport. So I think there's going to be a new learning on planning now. It may not be the old model that we saw, let's say, in places like Singapore. We'll just have to adapt it. And also, the Indian market is different. Our economics are different. So I think it'll take some more time to really evaluate what will be the new model. But I'm convinced more and more it's all going to be about bringing in all these elements of work, live, learn, play together in different forms across the city rather than very segregated zoning.
Mr. Vishal, there's a question for you that in the trends that you had mentioned, the question is any new tier 2 cities that will be taking a lead in commercial development after COVID because of more open land and low cost?
That has always been an option. It's not a new thing. Land cost in tier 2 cities or tier 3 cities has always been lower. But one needs to remember cost of construction doesn't change much. Okay, wherever you construct, I mean, cost of cement, cost of steel, contractor costs, labor costs are pretty much the same. Maybe in some cases it's even higher for the same product because it's more difficult to execute and it takes more time to execute. So from a land point of view, yes, there's a cost difference, but from a construction point of view, there's not much of a difference. That said, I think the most important thing that one needs to understand is availability of, the IT employees, the resources. I think most of the resources like to work in big cities because of the way they are, the opportunities that they get to work in big cities. So if the social distancing norm becomes very stringent going forward, and therefore working in a big city becomes more difficult, then I think tier 2 cities will get a little bit more importance. Like I said, I won't swing to the other side of the pendulum at all. It might increase, let us say, their importance from where they are by about 20% or so. But I don't think it will make such a big dramatic change. You need to also understand that the large outsourcing companies, okay, they're already operating in, let us say, 12, 15 cities of the country. They already have operations in cities like Kochi, Indore, these kind of cities. So we are already seeing operations in these cities. That said, I think importantly, we have to understand the needs of the IT, the workforce. That is a very, very big challenge to overcome. To be able to get the right workforce to support your strategy is the most important facet of this tier 2 and tier 3 strategy. Not costs. Costs are not that high.
I think questions keep coming, so I'm going to take the last question because we have few online questions as well. So this question is for the residential. Don't you think this is the time for the government to start and support rent to own concept similar to Dubai market, which is supported by the government to improve performance and contribution of real estate in GDP? This question is from Pankaj Gauri, VP Sales, ARG Reality.
I think to some extent we are getting there slowly. Your interest rates are down to about 7.5%. You're finding a host of developers helping you further with, EMIs or EMI payments or EMI rates in the initial period. I expect rates to go down even further. So as this gap between renting costs and EMI costs start coming closer, it may not be completely the same, but just getting closer, the sense of home ownership, owning an asset, I think that will become a significant play. Just remember, we were already at about 10% home rates, not more than about 2.5, 3 years ago. So 10% down to 7.5% now in the affordable middle income segment, that's a significant pull down. And I think this will get further down. I won't be surprised if we get to 6.5%. Right? So we're getting there. And in a way, the government is doing it. Also, the recent change of bringing back the PMAY scheme, extending it for a year. So you're getting further benefits on your first home ownership. So all of this effectively is getting there in my view. And so it's a big positive for the end consumer.
Teresa, you would like to add anything?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I would say that just to give you an example, at a project like Embassy Boulevard today, which is a high-end project of ours in Bangalore, 51 acres, we have close to 160 villas. We have been able to offer a rental upside of almost 5 to 6%, which is unheard of in residential. Right now, even typically residential returns are in the 2 to 3%. Now, if the interest rates are lowered, and the fact that you're not earning that much in fixed deposits as well, I think the gap, which is almost 4.25%, people would start looking at investing in residential properties and making sure that they are, the developer actually helps them in leasing out. So we have an entire asset management function which helps them, which helps that owner to manage the tenant relationship, to make sure the rents are collected, all ongoing maintenance, everything is done. So our entire concept of managed residences has helped boost our residential asset management portfolio as well. And this is something that will definitely be of interest even for NRI buyers who are making use of the depreciated value of the rupee on one side, making that investment. They put away money in financial instruments so far, but once they start investing that money back and making that money work for them, these kind of concepts is only going to increase in value and in interest.
Thank you. Attendees, again, we'll be taking questions later on the mail. I am seeing a lot of people still giving us a lot of questions. It's already now 42 questions. This is the last question which I'll take. We promise you we are going to send individual questions to everyone and we'll try to give you the answer for the same. The last question from this gentleman who's been pushing for this question to Mr. Vishal is, what kind of trends will be seen in commercial retail sector as to communal retail areas such as malls and cinemas?
I think commercial we've discussed quite a bit. I'll just touch upon retail. I think retail, of course, and we know that retail is the most challenged apart from the travel and tourism sector. The retail is very challenged. That said, I think see, all our plans, whether it is commercial real estate or any other business for that matter, is going to be subject to this COVID situation being brought under control, whether it's through a vaccine or it's through a treatment, right? If it is 1 year or 2 years, whatever the time frame, but it certainly, if it is, it'll be more than 2 years, it'll be a serious problem for all of us. Excuse me. So I think we have to speak in two parts. One is in this current period, that is where we don't have a vaccine and a cure, and a period where we will have a vaccine and a cure. So I think there are, and there are malls that are operating, or retail spaces that are operating, and there are malls and retail spaces which will get operational maybe after 2 years. So I think during this period, the challenge is going to be very, very strong. I think the fundamental part is that the frequency of customer visits to a retail destination are going to be far more infrequent than what we have seen in the past. And they will be much more purposeful. For example, if you are living close to a mall or a retail space or a high street, or you want to meet up with some friend, you don't mind meeting up in a mall and these kind of places. You will certainly not do that anymore. You will meet in each other's houses. But when you used to earlier do it, that is go to a mall just to meet your friend casually. You also tend to go to shops and buy things on impulse. Okay, so I think it is going to be more of a destination visit, more purposeful visit. Therefore, when I started my career when I started working in Chopper Stop, I'll say about more than 20 years back when we started up the pretty much the entire large operation. We saw that the heavy footfalls and the heavy shopping happened in the festival periods. Diwali, Christmas, and then the sale periods. And the rest of the year, we should see a big dip. But as we kept moving on, year on year, up, let's say after around 2000, the year 2000 and thereafter, we saw a flattening of the curve. So you don't see a big spike during Diwali, and then a crash, and then one spike in December, and then again flat completely. No. So what we saw was a much more even shopping trend. But of course, there were certain spikes in the festival seasons. What I feel is going to happen is that the spikes are going to return now. That unevenness of shopping behavior is going to now come back into a trend during this period of caution. So I think only if you need to shop for your occasion or a festival will you go to a mall or a retail outlet to shop, not just to see what new has come to the shop, right? Um, going to see a movie, I think still people will go and see movies, provided multiplex operators are able to provide you with proper social distancing seats. In any case, if you look at how the multiplex business in India works, it works at an occupancy of 50% or thereabouts. So what is going to happen is that um, to be able to meet that standard, say 50% or even go down to 40%, you'll have to cut down the number of shows and the number of seats, because it takes much more time to accommodate people in the theaters versus what you see as a big herd standing outside a cinema. So I think there's going to be a big adjustment. Fewer films will come out. The extent of content supply will reduce dramatically. Number of shows will reduce. So you can say that number of people watching a movie will come down by 50-60% at least for this 1 or 2 year period. So therefore costs will have to be adjusted to that extent, but people will go. See, we are social animals. You get a chance to go even buy vegetables or buy a loaf of bread, which you can get very easily in your house. You still want to do it yourself. And can you imagine when there is a relaxation of law, you are certainly going to step up and go and watch a movie that you want to see. Okay, if you were seeing 5 movies in a year last year, then today you will see probably 1 or 2, like I said. And automatically also content and investment in creating content is going to come down. So I think, and operating costs will have to be controlled to that extent. I feel even restaurant business will come back. Okay, I feel it will come back to the extent of 30, 40 or even 50%. There is 50% of seating inside. See, we are, Charles Darwin said survival of the fittest, right? We are humans. We are jugadis. We will bring out a solution to overcome our challenges. We are not going to sitting like that and saying, "Oh God, I am stuck so badly. My business is finished." Nobody thinks like that. Or a successful entrepreneur, or even an average entrepreneur will not think like that. So we are going to find solutions. We are going to have in-dining experience in restaurants. We'll of course have more extent of home deliveries, etc. taking place. But again, you are not sure in home delivery also. What is your guarantee that the person who is delivering food to you in your house is clean or is not infected? So there are going to be no guarantees, and people know it. You can't stop living your life. I think that mentality and that resilience, mental resilience, is going to come in with a lot of precaution that we would like to take in the way we go about doing things, wearing of masks, etc., disinfectants, washing hands. All those things are going to take place. So I think, going back to the fundamental question, but this understanding is very important. I think we will be able to achieve 50-60% of our business as we left it when this COVID situation started in retail. At least 50-60% in the next, you can say, year or so, if the problem is not solved. And if it doesn't continue to get solved even after 1 year, I think we'll go back to 75-80%. which is not a bad space to be in. The challenge, in my view, is for malls which are under construction and are ready to be launched in the next 6 to 9 months. Now they have to first get ready. They have to convince retailers to come on board, confirm their leases, do their fit outs, and start operations, and then generate that level of footfall. And that is a huge challenge. So, to my mind, I think the best solution for these kind of malls is to postpone their launches by year and a half at least. I think that is the most, you can say, iffy space, if I have to use that term, in the retail sector. Otherwise, I feel that life is going to go on to the extent possible, and we will all work towards making that happen, I think. And I think that's good for us. That's good for us. I think we have to build our own resilience, our own immunity levels, our herd immunity, as we say it, and we need to go on and make life work for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for giving such great insight. It's been a great panel, great discussions are happening. You can already see the viewers are asking a lot of questions. So before we close this panel, let's take few online questions and then we will be closing the panel now.
Sure.
So thank you, Kritika. So we have received some 10 questions online, but right now we'll be able to take 2 of them. So question one is from Mr. Ismail. How can co-living leverage technology further?
Well, I think, yeah, that is one of the areas that I briefly touched upon in my initial question as well. Not only co-living, I would say home renting in general. Let's talk about co-living as a living solution itself. Home renting in general is going to start having lot more of technologies that is going to be leveraged, right? So, in fact, as we speak, over the last couple of months, we have been starting off with video visits of the property to show to the customers, whether you want to book this property only based upon a video rather than visiting and having a personal touch and stuff like that. So there is going to be a scope of involvement of technology in co-living further and furthermore, and I think there is no limit to technology. I mean, we have just begun to and I think one of the quotes that Mr. Anuj Puri had mentioned in one of the speeches that he had given was, I think real estate is a sector where technology is least leveraged. This is a place where technology has not had significant impact even after multiple startups have tried to do it. So I think there is a huge opportunity, and this kind of a problem is going to help startups think towards more and more innovative solutions towards technology. Although there are no real solutions in my mind at this point of time, but definitely there is a huge opportunity in innovation in that area, and I'm pretty positive we'll see a lot more contribution coming up there.
Okay, thank you. So we'll take the last question, and question is for Mr. Amit and Mr. Arnav. To co-working, will co-working become more expensive going in the future?
So I think it's a relative question, right? I mean, co-working is a reflection of the micro market that you're in. And clearly, if the micro market is getting a bit more expensive or perceived expensive because of de-densification, then yes, in the short term, there will be probably a bit of an uptick in terms of the pricing that happens. But I think in the long term, it'll all adjust. I think, as was said earlier, with the depreciating dollar, and also a combination of work from home, work near home, and obviously a reduction in terms of the requirement in central business districts of that space. I think net overall for enterprise and small medium businesses, the net cost of real estate will remain the same. But yes, in specific micro markets, because of de-densification, because of the rentals and the densities going lower, I think there will be a bit of a price correction.
I think it'll remain consistent, but also a lot of innovation will come in the co-working deal making also with landlords. To what Vishal was mentioning with regards to retail as such, I see a huge potential in co-working players partnering with developers in retail malls which are not doing too well, or maybe which are under construction. the whole anvil of the management model, which Amit mentioned earlier in the hotel segment classification. If developers are open to those concepts and landlords are open to those concepts, partnering in residential townships as equal partners and operating partners, where you're enhancing the experience of the whole development and also being a player in your own right. When you have collaborations like that, I don't think there will be a price increase. Maybe there might be a price decrease for all of them.
Thank you very much. So that was the last question. And so I would like to thank all the speakers. Thank you, Kritika, for moderating this session. Thanks to all attendees for joining us. If you have any questions related to the topic, please let us know, or you want to associate with us for the upcoming webinars, you can write to us at info@realitynxt.com. This webinar has been recorded. For people who missed the webinar, we'll be uploading it later on our social media channels. This event is brought to you by Reality NXT. This is Vrindanjali Raval signing off.